since the Ron Paul campaign. Remember that? Welcome to the presentation tonight. I'm so glad everybody made it out. Flyers work, apparently. So, speaking of flyers, there was actually a kid who came up to me and said that he was handing out flyers for this event on his college campus, and a policeman stopped him and said, "You can't do that. There's a policy against that. We have a free speech zone, and then you can hand out flyers in." And I love what the kid said. He said, "Well, I've heard about these free speech zones. I studied them in history class. I think they called America." I think he went on to hand out those flyers anyway. So good for him, and it paid off. I'm Harlan Dietrich. I'm the owner of Griffin Books. That little bookstore across the street that the FBI apparently wanted to blow up. So, if you don't know what I'm referring to, please just Google what I just said, and you'll find out all about it. Speaking of people that are on fire, that was a really bad segue, but I'm just gonna go over that and hope nobody noticed, but I guess they do now. But I wanted to introduce somebody who just got back from the Continental Congress. He really is on fire. I met this man early on when we opened up the bookstore. He was a young activist at his college campus at Texas State, and he.
Hopefully it's not Florida.
It probably is. That's okay. That rain sauce is clear.
Okay, that was a great introduction. I appreciate it, and I want to give a great thanks to Harlan Dietrich and everything that the bookstore has done for this community. I also want to start by thanking Mr. Griffin. I've had the pleasure of chaperoning him today and last night, and it's been rather humbling to share the stage. It's going to be rather humbling to share the stage with him. It's a great honor. This man has had a wonderful, a very major impact in my development as an activist, and my appreciation for freedom, so I thank you. Yeah. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about liberty. What it is and why it should be important to us. It's my hopes to inspire individuals. I see a lot of people in this room. I also want to point out what a great honor it has been to be an activist in Austin with such a wonderful group of people, and it's very, very inspiring to see so many people here tonight. So.
Look at him, he's a star. The next mayor of Austin, President of the United States, John Bush.
It's probably going to be archived.
I just want to mention a few things now. I want to mention that after, we're having a lot of fun here, and this is great, but afterwards we have a book signing at the bookstore just 2 blocks east of here. You literally will go downstairs and walk out the front door and see the front door of the bookstore. West, sorry, just west. I've been describing east all day for everybody calling me for this place, but now I have to reverse that. So west, I always think of all the sort of conferences that go on here and the speeches given here. We have a pharmaceutical industry convention going on here when we're not here. And I always think it's funny that they walk out those doors and they see my bookstore. So it's pretty good. But I want to mention also all the people that helped get the word out about this, and that's We Are Change Austin for one. That's a great word. They meet at the bookstore at 11:30 every Saturday. so please join them. The Deborah Medina campaign, they're doing great work, and we all need to support them. And lastly, I'd like to thank the University of Texas. Check this place out. I think we've arrived, Patriot Movement. It's very accommodating, and they couldn't be nicer. But what you've been waiting for, not listening to the boring bookstore owner, but actually listening to the very exciting book writer, Mr. Griffin. I just wanted to say, look, I graduated from this university, so this is literally me coming home in some way. And I graduated with a degree in history and American studies. And on the first day of every history class, you have a discussion on a term. It's called cui bono. It's Latin for who benefits. And that seems reasonable, right? That seems instinctual. That's how we should construct history. That's how we should look at history. Who benefits? But every first day of class ends, and you have a long semester where you ignore that term, and you don't look at who benefits. And you ignore everything in Mr. Griffin's book, Creature from Jekyll Island. And so you graduate like I did, thinking that you know history, and that you know what the Federal Reserve is. I have a degree from the University of Texas. I have to know what the Federal Reserve is. Of course I do. But then you read Mr. Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and you realize you know nothing. Like I did. And G. Edward Griffin had a profound effect on me. He gave me an education for $25 that I didn't get with a $30,000 degree. So I'm tempted to ask UT for my money back. But I guess giving us this place to hold this is a start, so we'll take it on the layaway. I just wanted to express my thanks to Mr. Griffin for writing that book, and I think everybody needs to read that book. If you're studying history, if you're not really into history, it doesn't matter. It's a very rich lesson in civics and understanding where we came from and where we are in history. And I think everybody needs to understand it. It's a very, very important topic of how money works, where it comes from, who makes it, more importantly, and what that means for us. But I'll let him have a profound effect on you guys tonight. And afterwards, you can go purchase the book at Brave New Books if you feel so inclined. And Mr. Griffin will sign it for you. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the legend, even though he doesn't like me to say that, the legend, Mr. G. Edward Griffin.
Thank you so much. I love being a legend. I'm really disoriented tonight. I came expecting that, well, I'll walk in, the room will be, maybe 60 or 100 people, and I'll get up on the stage and then talk for about an hour, and then that'll be it. But I'm so fired up listening to what's happened already, and by seeing the size of this audience, I'm thinking I should just throw out my speech and do something else. Two things I decided I definitely wanted to do. One is I want to move to this town. And the other thing that I noticed after John took a drink of that water, he gave such a fiery talk. I wanted to drink that. That was wonderful, John. I really appreciate your depth of the I came with my money hat on to talk about the Federal Reserve System and money, But I'm going to take it off just for a few minutes because of you, John. I'm going to put my ideology hat on and my Constitution hat, because you triggered a couple of thoughts that I thought were so important. You were talking about the Constitution and how wonderful it was, and how many unusual concepts were put into it for the first time in history. This was quite a rare document. It was the first time in history that a revolution had been fought, and the victorious side declined to simply declare themselves to be the new monarchy. I mean, that's the old style, right? You overthrow the king because you didn't like the king, because he didn't do what you liked, and he wasn't fair to your group, and so forth. You overthrew the king, and then you became the king. And it didn't take long because of the adage that we know that power corrupts. So if you're the king, now you've got the power, you become corrupted. And if you don't, by the way, the guy that comes along after you surely will. So people have always focused on replacing people, replacing kings, monarchs, the bad guys, and they've never looked at the system. They always thought the system was okay, when in reality it has always been the system that was the problem and not the people. Because as long as the system has the ability to give human beings the power over other human beings, then that is going to corrupt human beings. It's as simple as that. And so our founding fathers came along and they got a hold of that concept, and they decided to change the system. Wow, what a thought. And so they wrote this thing we call the Constitution, which is, on one view, you can look at it and say it's a bunch of rules and regulations and directions of how to run a state. But if you really analyze it, it's a system of checks and balances, and as Jefferson called it, chains. You remember, after the Constitution had been written, Jefferson was engaged in correspondence with one of his friends, and his friend said, "Mr. Jefferson, now that we have this new system in place, how can we be sure that only just men are elected to office?" And those of you who remember this quote, remember Jefferson responded almost irately. He said, "Speak to me not of just men. Rather, let us bind men down with the chains of the Constitution." And in that simple statement, that political philosophy, which really was the essence of our whole republic, to bind men down. He was saying, of course we're not going to have just men. Duh. Of course scoundrels are going to be attracted into bureaucratic positions, because as long as we give them the power to abuse other human beings under the protection of government, they're going to take advantage of that, of course. So we should not design a system that will ensure that only just men are elected to office. We must design a system that will assume that scoundrels will be elected to office, and design the system so that even the scoundrels cannot take away our liberty. It's as simple as that. Pointed out so eloquently, this was kind of a radical departure in history, and it was a wonderful departure, and it worked for about 100 years. Now the reality creeps in. It didn't last, did it? It wasn't perfect. If it had been perfect in some way, or in all ways, why, we would still have the chains of the Constitution. But now we know, with this experience, that, well, actually, the process started almost from the very first administration, Washington administration. There were pressures and opinions and movements within the newly formed government to begin to break those chains of the Constitution. And although it was very small in the beginning, with the passage of time, and especially with the passage of the generation that died off and forgot all of these concepts, had forgotten the spirit of the American Revolution, we'd forgotten the heavy weight of the rule from England, forgotten all those things, with new generations coming up, and new prosperity, all of these things faded into history, and people forgot to take a look at those chains, and one by one, they were broken, one link by another. So today we have practically no links left in the Constitution. And so it's our job, it's our privilege, it is our duty to repair the chain. And I think that if we look at it that way, it becomes a very exhilarating challenge for us, because we can look at the Constitution, which in my view was a beta model.